Hello, I'm Adam,
And I'm Adrian.
and welcome to Cast from the Crypt. Today, we're talking about a lovely, cheesy 80s sci-fi fantasy. I've been getting really into that genre, and the movie we're talking about today, the one that we've selected, is Krull.
Krull!
Krull! I kept saying it like that.
Oh, I kept saying it like the troll hunter in Troll Hunter
Oh, wow.
when he yells out troll.
Niche reference.
Very, very, very niche. But that's how I was saying the name.
Well, good. Apart from enjoying the name, did you enjoy the movie? I kind of convinced you to watch it, so
It's fine.
okay.
It's not bad at all. Well, okay. I like it because it's not great, but it's enjoyable because of the glimmers of greatness that it has. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It really does.
This movie came out in 1983, right? So for context, we are in space opera territory. People are riding the wave of Star Wars left, right, and center. And there was a market for this kind of movie. Also, D&D is like the biggest thing of all time, as it still is. So there was a market for this movie, and I think it does a fine job at wriggling its way in. But I can tell, this movie doesn't have a lot of staying power, right? It doesn't have the staying power that Star Wars, that the first movie, or like A Princess Bride has.
Yeah,
Those are just my immediate thoughts.
I think that's fair. This is a very, for lack of a better words, kind of cheap movie
Yeah.
in so many different ways. This is the era of Conan the Barbarian. Red Sonja comes to mind. Arnold Schwarzenegger's in both of those. And Flash Gordon. They were trying to make these, what I like to call, sci-fi novel cover movies. When you look at, an old 80s, 90s sci-fi cover of, a book or a fantasy book, and they look, ridiculous. They took that and they made it into a movie. And the posters for all these movies look ridiculous. They're clearly, Star Wars inspired.
They're cool.
They're really cool. All the posters are really cool. You know it's going to be, dumb when you get into it. Some dumb action, sci-fi, fantasy BS. And it will be BS. And this movie was BS. But I enjoyed it. I really had a good time with this movie.
Well, let me put this out there. I just want to be clear where I stand. The movie, it's a 2.5, 3 stars for me. The poster, 5 stars all the way. That's a 10 out of 10 poster. As is true of most of the movies that came out in the late 70s, early 80s. Like you were saying, that's a great way of putting it. Like the sci-fi novels that you see walking through half-price books. That is kind of what the posters remind me of.
Yeah, or maybe a cheap video game, a cheap arcade game, kind of.
Yeah.
Knockoff Castlevania.
Now, did you see the budget for this movie?
No, what is the budget?
Okay, this movie cost about $30 million to make, which in 1983 is nothing to sneeze at. But do you know how much it made?
How much?
$17 million.
That's unfortunate for this movie.
It lost a lot of money.
I can understand why.
Yeah. I know it's definitely gotten a cult following, but at the time this movie tanked, and of course the critic opinions were always very low. So watching it was interesting because I think I see what you saw in it when you suggested we cover it, or rather, I think I know that I see what you saw in it. I also completely understand why audiences didn't like it.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best movie. Like with all these Barbarella sci-fi fantasy movies, it's trying to simultaneously both be save the princess with an awesome weapon, probably a sword, something ridiculous, and also there's weird spaceships and sci-fi elements. That is huge in this time period, and this movie is definitely trying to do that. But basically, at the beginning and every so often, there's one minor thing that's kind of sci-fi, And then everything else, it's just a fantasy movie. It's like just a fantasy movie, and then they'll have 2 moons. Or,
yeah.
you know.
Well, and to your point, right? It's absolutely like sword and sorcery meets space opera. That's what they're going for. But it's not just that it's like mostly fantasy most of the time. It's that it's like medieval, nearly Arthurian most of the time. And then, yeah, you're right. They'll sprinkle in like a moon, or you'll see the villains, which are like orcs, but in space suits, but they're also not orcs. They're like slugs.
Slorks.
Space slorks, yeah. God, and every time, because my understanding, right, is that they are like slugs in suits, right? Is that what you got from that?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. They're evil creatures. You gotta fight them.
Right. It's just fodder for our main characters. But the effects of the suit shutting down, like that old 1983 lightning effect, it looked like, and this is a compliment, really, it looked like the Power Rangers effects, but worse. Like every time they deactivate one of the villains, one of the suits, there's like this hokey, it looks like they colored over the cell with some sort of like neon marker highlighter. It's like this red lightning. It's really bad.
I mean,
every time I saw it, I would like cringe.
Every time I saw it, I was like, yeah.
Yeah,
Par for the course.
So what worked for you in this movie? Because you suggested it, right? So I'm very interested.
The runtime for me, I think, was pretty 1 hour 21 minutes.
That's fair.
Pretty fair, pretty easy. It was for me just like turn your brain off and watch this really dumb sci-fi fantasy. There was so much that didn't work for me, and that's kind of why I enjoyed it. Like, there was so much I was like, oh, this doesn't make sense. This is dumb. I just enjoyed this. It's very much like Lord of the Rings. Form a band and destroy the evil and free the land, you know. Super basic. Except that it's just dumb. It's that, but it's done much more haphazardly. And that's what I love about it.
No, it is very much Fellowship of the Ring, but really not good.
Bad, yeah, exactly.
And also ripping off Star Wars.
Yes. And trying to do both Lord of the Rings and Star Wars in one movie that's kind of cheapy, that's not going to work. Like innately, that's okay. You've bit off more than you can chew.
I will say, Peter Jackson could never.
He wishes.
Not in 1983. Not in 1983. This movie, I don't even know. What's the saying? It walked so Lord of the Rings could crawl or whatever. So.
It walked so Lord of the Rings could run.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah. For me, I have to compliment 2 things right out the gate. Number 1, the sets are pretty freaking cool. For the same reasons I enjoy Princess Bride, I really enjoy the sets in these movies. They are very clearly built on a soundstage. In fact, one of the very famous ones, the 007 soundstage, it's one of the big Hollywood sound stages that they created the sets on. And I really, really do like the work here. Like you said, a lot of it's it's mostly fantasy, but nonetheless, they do a really good job building the world here. And for me, I even liked the hokier bits with, remind me the girl's name.
Princess Lissa.
Yes, I even liked the hokier bits with Princess Lissa in the, like, alien craft, the alien ship where she's being held. I thought it was actually a really nice contrast to the open, fantastical landscapes, right? This sort of tight, drab, futuristic location that they had her in. So the set work, very good. And of course, did you know who did the score on this one?
Who?
James Horner, just a incredibly prolific composer for movies. Of course, I think he's probably most famous for Aliens. But that was a pleasant surprise. The music in this movie is great. Like, really, really good. The kind of stuff that I wish I knew about so I could use it in a D&D campaign.
Sure. Yeah, it's perfect, like, for this setting, for this film. going on an adventure, you know. I would like to talk a little bit about the production.
Please.
Okay, so this is a very fun fact. After I watched this movie, my brother didn't watch the whole thing with me, but he saw me watching like a part of it. And he showed me, well, okay, so the main antagonist, the Dark Lord figure in this movie, if you will, is simply referred to as the Beast. And the Beast is the sci-fi element of this story. He comes down, he's the destroyer of worlds. He comes down in his castle that is also a spaceship. So he has a spaceship castle, he lands on a world, and he takes it over. He kidnaps Princess Lissa so she can be his bride, and he'll have legitimacy to rule the entire world, and it's some, like, you know, space planet. And then other than that, it's a fantasy. The man who did the Beast himself, he made an animatronic suit. How did you feel about the Beast's design, I might ask first?
I loved it.
Yeah, he's easily the best creature in the movie.
Yeah.
It looks like a weird, almost Creature from the Black Lagoon-esque alien monster, but it's got like working eyebrows, its lungs, in its heart you can see like beating and breathing inside of its weird ribcage. It's pretty like articulate.
And the teeth, the maw.
Yes, he's on the cover. Cool. You know, they really do use this design well, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, the guy that made it, his name is Nick Maley, and I know this because my brother told me he just watched a video. Nick Maley was one of the people who made Yoda, the Yoda puppet. He's pretty much known for making the Yoda puppet, or at least working on the Yoda puppet. Yeah. And my brother watched an interview with him, and at the very beginning of the interview, he said, yeah, well, I got hired to work on Star Wars. I just got off working on this movie called Life Force. So this guy went from working on Life Force, that we have talked about, directly to working on Star Wars. And after that, he made the Beast for this movie. So, wow.
A repertoire.
I know. What a great few things to have done.
Yeah. I think the first two are really neat. No, he should be proud of his work in this movie. That's probably one of the cooler parts. Again, I think actually the special effects in general in this movie are really, really fun. I think they're very of the times. I think they are not bad, save for the stuff that I already talked about, right? The CG stuff that they did back then, like the lightning effects, but all the practical stuff, the practical visual effects, I think are pretty top notch, actually. But unfortunately, that does not make an excellent movie.
No. The plot alone is ham-fisted.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I still do not understand the Cyclops character.
Yeah, also designed by Nick Maley, I'll say, but
horrifying to look at.
He's horrifying to look at. There is a Cyclops. I feel like I've never seen a Cyclops not look so bizarre. But of course, this is a guy in prosthetics, so they cover up this man's face with a fake eye, and it looks so weird because it has to kind of stick out because it's on a man's face. It's it's great. It does blink the one eye, which is pretty impressive. Blink. Yeah.
I've got a fun fact for you about this movie.
All right, hit me.
Okay, so once again, the satanic panic was going on at this time because D&D was increasing in popularity amongst certain crowds. And there were many people that thought, it was heavily rumored, that this movie was supposed to be a Dungeons and Dragons tie-in. And of course, the people over at D&D said that was not the case. And the movie actually has no dragons in it, so it doesn't make much sense now. But there was a time in which the original draft for this movie was titled The Dragons of Krull. And the Beast, who we of course love his design because it's kind of alien and Creature from the Black Lagoon-esque. But the original design was a kind of dragon overlord.
if he was just a dragon, then there would be no sci-fi element to this movie, and
right, it would be just
weird.
Pure fantasy. Yeah,
yeah. There's already not enough sci-fi to justify the sci-fi, I think. So removing that would just be like, oh, there's 2 moons for some reason.
I agree.
We do not have to get deep into this plot. This plot is not deep as is.
No.
But I'd like to talk a little bit about what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so as I said, the Beast has invaded this planet with his evil flying spaceship castle. There are 2 warring factions of humans, I'll say. And the warring has ended because Colwyn is engaged to marry Princess Lissa. Right at the wedding, though, the Beast's minions attack and kidnap the princess. So the movie's set up. Now Colwyn has to go save his princess. They'll unite, all the humans will unite and remove the evil from the land. Yeah. Before he does that, though, of course, the classic hero's journey. He needs a boon. He needs a wise old man. And we get that in the form of Aenir, I believe his name is.
Yes, Aenir the Old One.
Aenir the Old One. That's exactly what he is. He's he's the Old One. He doesn't seem particularly wizardly. I don't think he ever says he's a wizard, but he has extensive knowledge of every mystical thing in this land. He is the sage character. And he tells Colwyn that the only way they can destroy the beast is if they get the ancient magical glaive, the holy weapon they will use. A glaive, for anyone that doesn't know, is like a 5-pointed throwing star. It's got like knives. It looks so ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea this was a real thing. All I know is that when you told me to watch this movie, you said like 2 things. I'm into the hokey 80s fantasy stuff right now. And then you said the glaive. And I did not know what a glaive was at the time. Now I know what a glaive is. I thought it was just a thing in this movie. Apparently it's a real thing. How do you know what that is?
A glaive. There's a glaive monkey that throws glaives in Balloon's tower defense.
Wow. Wow. You're talking niche references. Actually, Balloons is far more. Yeah, if you know. I think Balloons was far more popular than a Troll Hunter.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. No, their glaives are real. I don't understand how they're used still.
I think it's just like a big throwing star, I guess.
They seem so impractical.
Well, that's because you see this one in this movie. The one in this movie is ridiculous. It's humongous. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. You think it's going to be like a big struggle to go get the glaive, but like they just go, it's like in a cave, they climb a mountain, and they just get it. It's like pretty easy. Now, right here is where they go wrong. They get the glaive. They get the holy weapon, this cool boon. This is going to be what our hero uses to vanquish the evil. And the first thing Aenir the Old One says is only use it when the time is right. So for the rest of the movie, he does not use the glaive. He can't use the magic weapon. He's never practiced using it. He has no idea how it works, and he's not allowed to until he's fighting the beast at the very end of the movie, and we do not see this glaive. He has like a crappy sword when he actually has to fight someone. And it's so dumb to me that like you wouldn't use the main weapon that's the center of the poster.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Immediately I was like, don't use the weapon? What are you talking about?
Well, and he like reaches into lava for it. You know, they really do build up the glaive and then it isn't used. You're right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Until the very end of the movie. And it's like, okay, well.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up because that is ridiculous. I think the most ridiculous part of this movie for me was that we're just supposed to somehow follow this fellowship. I was having a hard time with the motley crew that they establish midway through the film and then expect you to care about any of them.
Yeah, and they're thrown together.
Oh my God, so hastily.
Yeah, so it's you know, Colwyn and Aenir the Old One, And they immediately run into Ergo the Magnificent. He's a magician.
The worst character.
And yeah, the worst character by far. He's supposed to be like comic relief, but he's like a Cockney bloke who's kind of like bitter at first. And the bit is he always tries to transform himself into something and he can't do it. Like he says he's going to turn into a tiger and he turns into a cat or turns himself into a chicken. And like it's this recurring bit throughout the movie. And this character is utterly useless the entire time.
Yeah. And useless from an audience perspective too, because he's not funny.
Yeah.
So if he's supposed to serve as comedic relief, it didn't work. I want to meet the person that thinks that character is hilarious, because I'm convinced they don't exist.
Yeah, this character does not. I'm kind of glad he existed though. I was their attempt at comic relief was funny to me, if that makes sense. Being removed from the comic relief. The comic relief itself was not comedic.
I looked up that actor that plays Ergo. His name is David Batley, and supposedly he was a funny guy. He did a lot of work on the BBC, like, you know, the television comedies and stuff like that, but I was not into it in this movie.
Yeah.
At all.
So this movie came out in 1983 and is pretty, like, full of people. You'll never know who any of these people are. You know, this is a very, like, back room, behind the alleyway movie. But as our trio of Ergo, Colwyn, and Enir the Old are traveling, they are attacked by a group of bandits who, after a short fight scene, decide that they're going to join this fellowship and help for the greater good of mankind or whatever. And amongst the bandits is a young Liam Neeson.
A very young Liam Neeson.
A very young Liam Neeson, and Robbie Coltrane, who's been in a few things. He plays Hagrid, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't catch him. I'm not very familiar with Harry Potter, but that's cool.
Yeah. And other than that, nobody in this movie I've ever heard of before or after. But
yeah, it was weird to see Liam Neeson in there. And with like a very thick unibrow.
Yeah.
He was a burly man.
He was. He was young. His character has 8 wives too. He's like
yeah.
Sexy Liam Neeson.
I like stuff like this. These 80s, I guess we can't even call this a B movie, but you know, these early 70s and 80s projects where you do occasionally see, you know, an actor that's become really prolific nowadays. It's always interesting to see like what kind of roles they were scoring back then, but this is a pretty nothing role for Liam Neeson.
Yeah, I mean, almost every character in this movie is pretty.
Yeah, that's true.
There.
even the lead of this movie, the actor's name is Ken Marshall, that plays Colwyn. I have not seen that man in my life. He could have been president of the United States, and I would have never known. Apparently, he's some stage actor, and he did a lot of stage work, but it doesn't show. He's the driest, least interesting protagonist I've ever seen in a fantasy film.
Yeah, I did not expect an interesting protagonist going into this, I'll be honest, though.
I was at least hoping for that.
I expected a cardboard archetype and nothing more.
Well, you got it.
And that's exactly what I got, yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Well, I guess continuing with the plot. So, the Beast's castle, because it's a spaceship, it moves every day. So they can never attack the castle because it's never in one place, and they never know where it's going to be. So in order to find out where the castle will be, they have to go find the Emerald Seer and his young ward, Titch. And the Emerald Seer has to go to like a special cave. They have to escort him to a special cave so he can, you know, use his oracle powers and find out where the castle is going to be. And hilariously, I thought, absolutely hilariously, they have this blind oracle with them. They fail their mission, don't they? They meet resistance in this swamp. And while everybody's back is turned, a shapeshifter kills the Emerald Seer and takes his place. This is around the same time that we meet a Cyclops. The Cyclops like appears initially just to like throw a spear. Them. Yeah, he's watching them. He throws a spear at one of the beast's monsters and then disappears. And then later, for this bigger fight, shows up and like saves the day. And they're like, "Man, you saved us." And then he like actually is a character and he has dialogue. And he says he's gonna stay back and for some dumb reason, like watch their behind. And while that's happening, the Emerald Seer's killed and replaced. And I thought it was hilarious that they had this like a literal oracle, and they had an escort mission, and they fail. The oracle dies before he can use his oracle powers, and he's just like a blind old man. That's all he is in this movie.
I feel like there's a lot of that in this movie, like you said. The glaive initially. Right. The build up to the Emerald Seer for very little payoff. The entire mysticism. Again, the entire Cyclops character, that whole thing, completely lost on me. They build up the Cyclops with this mysticism. He's watching them through the woods. He saves the day. But there's very little payoff to any of this. For me, at least.
Oh, no, there is no payoff. Yeah. They describe the Cyclopses in this universe as they have one eye because with their other eye that they would otherwise have, they can see the moment of their death. And that's why they only have one eye, which is like, okay. and they set that up as like, he'll know when it's his time to die or whatever. But it doesn't really matter. Had he not known when he was going to die, I feel like he would have made the same choices. Yeah. It's just them adding like a layer of mysticism and, you know, adding to the fantasy of this movie. But like, it's just kind of, it's cool, but like, okay, it doesn't really do anything for the story.
Shortly after this, they do meet the Crystal Spider, which is cool and out of place.
That is my favorite part of the movie, I'd say. Yeah. What do you think?
Dude, the Crystal Spider rocks.
Yeah, he was cool. They have no real way of finding out where the castle is because their oracle dies. So the only way is for Aenir the Old. He knows a way. He has to go to the lair of the Crystal Spider. He has to go alone. And we get this fantastic scene of him climbing through this bizarre, humongous network of spider webs in this huge cave. And at the very center is like this crystal webbed room, it looks like. And actually is a giant spider chasing him. But by the time he gets into the room, he shouts at someone in the room to stop the spider. And the spider stops. He goes in. And within this room is the Widow of the Web, who's this feared enchantress, and she controls this giant spider, I guess. And we get this sense of, like, they know each other, and then we get this great scene where we learn that they long ago were actually lovers, and these mystical characters that have this past. And so the reason she's trapped in this crystal spider layers because she killed their child and has been exiled, and since then in this sort of like Greek fashion has become this horrible monster that everybody's afraid of, this evil enchantress.
This whole section was cool.
This was cool. He basically has to bargain with her to get the knowledge where the castle will be, but in doing so they both have to sacrifice themselves, and this was really cool to me. I like this scene.
Yeah, for me it felt, very Clash of the Titans seeing Medusa.
Yeah.
All of the stakes from something like that, all of the interesting, I hate to use this term too much, but mysticism that comes with that sort of, going into a dark cave, meeting an enchantress, but then adding the personal storyline, right? That emotional hook. Unfortunately, like one of the few really effective moments in this movie.
It's the only time that like it feels like there's gravity to the situation. The rest of the movie I'm like, okay, they're gonna win, they're gonna you know what's gonna happen. But here it's like, oh, he really does have to die. The widow gives him the sand from her hourglass. That is, I guess, how she controls the spider, and in doing so the spider will no longer be controlled and will attack her. And whenever the sand runs out, which he's just holding the sand, it like literally falls out of his hand. Whenever it runs out, he will also die. So he has to crawl away from the spider and escape while the spider kills his ex-lover, escape the cave, and relay the information to the Fellowship. And then he dies. The sand runs out and he dies, but they know where the fortress is again. This, Ynir the Old, is like the only character that really has magical powers of any import throughout the movie. It's the mystical character. You know he's powerful in some mysterious way, but you even after his death never really find out how. He's just this sage. And with his death, it does feel like, oh, they've lost a very important member of their group. They lost the one guy that knows how to do things. He told them what to do, now he's gone, and it's left to these heroes to finish the mission. Colwyn is no longer guided, he has to do the guiding. So here it is kind of like, okay, there's a nice story beat. This is a good part of the story. Everything around that, you know. Generic fantasy, whatever.
I agree. And then, God, just after this, don't get me wrong, I love fantasy creatures more than the next guy, especially when they serve as a sort of deus ex machina. But how did you feel about the fire mares that they have to use in order to reach the Black Fortress?
I think it was cool in concept, and they're called fire mares, but they're just like normal horses. I thought this was like really kind of out of the blue and funny too. They had no way of getting to the fortress. They know where it is, but how are they going to get there before the next 24-hour cycle passes and it teleports again? Of course, capture and tame a group of horses. Specifically fire mares, so like magic horses.
No, and all they are is Clydesdale horses with a really awful fire effect at their feet.
Yeah, they're just normal
like when they
horses.
run.
And this scene is like long too. It's you're watching these people tame a horse.
Yeah, they don't just get to the point. There's no like quick montage and then they're riding horses to the Black Fortress. It's like an entire, I mean, how long would you say? 20 minutes?
Yeah, it's 15 minutes? Good part of this movie's runtime is taming horses.
Yeah.
Which cool, but also like bizarre. It really kind of messes up the pacing because such a huge portion is dedicated to horse taming. I feel like they just like had horses and were like, we got to use the horses. We'll show off the horses. It's a fantasy. Well, they ride off to the fortress. Members of the Fellowship start dying off as they fight into the fortress. Liam Neeson dies tragically, widowing his 8 wives. But they're managed to hold. Oh yeah, the Cyclops holds the door
as does
open.
Rel. Yeah,
Rel the Cyclops, we should say. He holds the door open, like the heavy gate. He holds it open while everybody runs in, and then dies. And he knows it's his moment because he can foresee his death and all that. Cal, but you know, and at this point of the movie, it's just that this character sacrifices himself, and then this character sacrifices himself, and then this character sacrifices himself. But all these characters feel like they had no development. They were thrown in there. There were too many characters already. And you kind of know that like these characters are here to be fodder and to sacrifice themselves. So whenever they do have these like supposed to be emotional moments of, oh no, Rel the Cyclops is sacrificing himself. It's like, little payoff. We really don't have any emotional investment into these characters. And so the dramatics of their sacrifice mean so much less than the movie thinks they do.
God, and then right after, of course, this is the moment where Ergo finally gets to turn into an animal he intended to turn into. And they're being attacked by the Slayers, and he is able to magically, finally, transform into a tiger. And it's just super lame because you don't care about Ergo. And the beats beforehand where he was turning into different animals just didn't really work in the way that they intended, at least for me. So I felt nothing when he turned into a tiger. I felt apathy at best.
I thought, once again, this whole character to me was a joke.
So obnoxious.
A joke in not a good way. And when he did that, I was like, oh, he did it. Like that, like you couldn't see that coming.
Oh, yeah, I knew it was coming for sure.
Yeah, and they don't develop it. Like, he can't turn into the right thing, and then suddenly he can, and like, They don't explain why. Like, he doesn't figure anything out. He doesn't get better at magic. He just, like, it worked that one time. He does it now. Great, you know. But now they get inside of, like, the center of the fortress, and there's a massive dome that they're in, and I really don't understand what the layout of this fortress is and why. There's a massive dome that they're in, and then some characters fall through literally a trapdoor into a room with huge spikes and closing walls, and it's like hilarious because of course it is. Like, that's the most basic trap, isn't it? They actually do kill some characters with this trap, and you never do see, like, for as tropey as this trap is, I never see this trap kill people. And so I am glad to have seen a few characters die to the classic closing wall spike trap.
Yeah, that's true. But this was totally just the scene from the first Star Wars movie. The trash compactor slowly closing in.
It's in every freaking thing in the world.
Yeah, Bardoff does die here. So I guess there's stakes, ? But, right after this, Colwyn is able to breach the dome, and he and Lisa, or Lysa, are reunited.
Yeah, and, of course they are.
No mention of their dead friend.
No, yeah, who cares about their friends? These are the two characters. They've reunited. It's important. But now, the Beast shows up. And like we described it earlier, it kind of looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon, but maybe a little more space-esque. It really does look like if the guy that made the bat monsters from Life Force made the creature from the Black Lagoon. That's exactly what it is. And
that's a great way of describing it, and it's accurate.
Yeah, it's what it is. And they defeat him with the glaive. And first of all, he's like massive. Second of all, the glaive is so lame. He finally gets to use the glaive, and all he does is he, like, puts his hand out. He doesn't throw it. He just, like, puts his hand out, and as if it's the Force, the glaive just, like, slowly goes to the Beast while it's rotating and just embeds itself in its chest and kills the Beast. And it's, like, the most anticlimactic. I don't even think you can call it a battle. It's simply him killing the Beast.
It is so bad. And at this point, luckily the film is not too long, but it's a really, really lackluster finale.
Yeah.
One of the most lackluster finales I've seen in a movie that is trying to be this epic.
Yeah. Also, like, the Beast tries to attack them again as it's being killed by the glaive, and very loosely developed in this movie. Lisa has fire magic, I guess. Yeah, and then she, like, while they're watching the glaive tear this Beast a new one, she, like, she puts some fire in her hand and gives it to Colwyn, and now he has fire magic. She just, like, gives him her fire magic, and now I guess they're married. They really don't develop this at all.
She gave it to him. No, I can't even blame you. Like, she gave it to him because they had to quickly do a wedding ritual.
They don't ever explain why this involves fire magic, why she has fire magic, or why she never once in the movie actually uses her fire magic. But it's whatever. Now Colwyn has fire magic and he burns the Beast, and it's dead twice over. And because of that, the two living people in the spike room miraculously are saved, and for whatever reason, killing the Beast makes the walls recede, and happy day, the land is free. It's super, like, wrap it up ending too. Like, all right, kill the Beast, they're married. Okay, we did it. Yeah. Now
they live happily ever after.
Yeah, now they're living. They're doing great.
Now, did you catch at the end of this movie? It repeats the prophecy.
Yes,
and it makes mention that it is the son of the king and queen that will rule the galaxy. Do you think they thought there would be a Krull too?
I don't think so. I think maybe when they were writing it, they might have thought there was a Krull too, but from what I've read, the production was kind of a mess. So by the time the movie was finished, I don't even know if anyone involved in it would have wanted to be in a second Krull.
Yeah, I wouldn't have. Unless the checks were good, but I doubt it, considering they tanked. You know what? I don't know if you saw this. Here's another movie we have to review. Willow, starring Warwick Davis.
Of course.
Disney Plus, out of nowhere, is making a Willow series that takes place after the original movie.
Oh, wow.
I know. I don't know who wants it. All I know is I'm probably going to have to at least watch a episode. And I want Krull to get the same treatment.
I completely agree. There's no way in hell it will.
No. But although we probably would have said the same thing about Willow 2 years ago.
Yeah, who is that for? I mean, like, I guess it has its cult following, but wow.
No idea.
Niche.
Yeah,
is Warwick Davis going to be in it?
He is. He looks great.
Oh, man. I'm excited.
That's the good part, is that Warwick Davis is getting work.
Always glad to see it.
Me too. Maybe one day you and I can get our Krull prequel and or, series.
You know what I want, and I think is absolutely possible, but they're not going to do it. I want every bad 80s sci-fi fantasy to maybe have a movie or a series where they all have a crossover. Because they could easily have a crossover, Colwyn meets Flash Gordon meets Red Sonja meets Barbarella, and they all team up with Conan the Barbarian. Like, this could happen. They're all existing on their own separate fantasy planets, so why not?
The galaxy's big.
Yeah, the galaxy's big. Why not have a intergalactic powwow?
Hey, Jane Fonda's still kicking.
Yeah.
Get her in on the movie. She was Barbarella.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's here. We got Liam Neeson still, and Willow's getting a show, so I mean, why not?
Why not?
I'm going to continue watching bad sci-fi fantasies. This is a genre I have not seen much of, and I want to watch a healthy dose of. I have so many movies that I'm about to go watch.
I would like to watch more of these as well.
Well, next time you're free, we better watch Barbarella.
Please, dude, and we have to watch Willow.
Yeah, I'd love to, actually. Well, if this movie's not good, I think it at least scratches the itch I was trying to scratch with this type of film, with this genre. And it is kind of maybe not a good intro into that sort of genre, but I think for me it is, because now I've seen kind of a bad example of it being done, and everything else is going to look pretty good from here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. No, I think this movie is certainly worth the watch, especially if you can watch it for free like I did. Is it streaming on HBO Max?
Yes, I believe it is. This movie does make you nostalgic for this type of film, for this genre. It truly was an amazing era. This genre cannot exist today like it did in the 80s. I don't know, I'm just glad we got to see it.
No, I said me too. Thank you for suggesting it.
Thank you for joining me, Adrian.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you everybody for listening. Goodbye.